So everyone's talking about pepper topping for plants these days, claiming it's some kind of magic invisible pruning method. But what if I told you it's actually putting your plants into survival mode and honestly doing more harm than good? Today we're gonna dive deep into this popular plant myth to uncover the real truth and learn what actually helps your peppers thrive. Whether you're just starting out and have heard whispers about this technique, or you're an experienced gardener who's questioning your methods, this guide is really going to transform how you approach pepper plant care. The topping myth, what you think you're doing. So picture this, you've seen those absolutely stunning, perfectly bushy pepper plants loaded with fruits, and yeah, you're desperate to know the secret. Enter the gardening forums, YouTube channels, and those well-meaning neighbors who swear by one technique above all others, topping your pepper plants. The advice sounds logical enough: cut the main stem of your young pepper plant, and it'll be forced to branch out, creating a bushier plant that, supposedly, produces more peppers. This misconception has just spread like wildfire through gardening communities because, well, it seems to make intuitive sense. After all, when you remove the dominant growing point, the plant has to do something, right? A lot of gardeners believe that cutting the main stem forces the plant to redirect its energy into lateral branches, which, in theory, results in a more productive plant. The technique seems pretty straightforward. Just snip the top growing tip when your pepper plant reaches about 6 to 8 inches tall and then, watch the magic happen. But here's where the story takes a turn. What looks like a simple pruning technique is actually triggering a complex stress response in your pepper plant that may, honestly, be doing more harm than good. The visual results might seem promising at first glance, but when you dig a little deeper into the science and long-term outcomes, a totally different picture emerges. So here's the thing, it's not really pruning, it's more like trauma. When you cut the main stem of your pepper plant, you're not just doing some gentle gardening technique, you're basically performing surgery and, without any anesthesia. The plant doesn't see this as a nice little nudge to branch out and become more productive. Instead, its cellular alarm system just starts screaming, "Emergency! We're under attack and need to survive!" This survival response, it's totally hardwired into every pepper plant's DNA. When the main growing tip is suddenly removed, the plant, well, it immediately shifts into damage control mode. All that beautiful energy that was being used for healthy growth, root development, and eventually fruit production, yeah, it gets dramatically redirected. Instead of focusing on what you want, which is more peppers, the plant becomes totally obsessed with healing the wound you've just made and replacing the lost tissue. The thing is, the process is actually way more complex than most gardeners realize. Within just a few hours of topping, stress hormones start flooding the plant's vascular system. The wound site becomes super vulnerable to bacterial and fungal infections, which means the plant has to allocate precious resources just to produce defensive compounds. Meanwhile, the whole growth pattern gets disrupted, because dormant buds lower on the stem are suddenly getting all these conflicting chemical signals about whether they should stay dormant or, spring into action. This stress response can set your pepper plant back by weeks. While you're waiting for those promised lateral branches to develop, an untopped plant is already establishing a stronger root system, developing more leaf area for photosynthesis, and preparing for earlier fruit production. The topped plant, meanwhile, is essentially starting over from a wounded state, having lost valuable growing time during the critical early season period. So how do you achieve that coveted, bushy, productive pepper plant without traumatizing it? The answer lies in understanding what plants actually need to thrive naturally. Enter the concept of invisible pruning, a holistic approach that works with your pepper plant's natural growth patterns rather than against them. Invisible pruning recognizes that pepper plants naturally want to branch and produce multiple growing points. The key is creating the right conditions for this natural tendency to express itself, rather than forcing it through traumatic intervention. This approach focuses on optimizing light exposure, providing proper support systems, and making subtle adjustments that guide, rather than shock the plant into desired growth patterns. So, the foundation of invisible pruning really starts with proper spacing and light management. When pepper plants get enough light from all angles, they just naturally develop multiple growing points, and that happens without any cutting required. Basically, it's about giving each plant enough room to spread out, making sure those lower branches get plenty of light, and, maybe even using reflective mulches or some strategic companion planting to maximize photosynthesis throughout the entire plant structure. Support systems actually play a pretty crucial role in invisible pruning techniques. By providing sturdy cages or stakes early in the season, you're really allowing the plant to develop its natural branching pattern without the weight of developing fruits causing any structural problems later on. This kind of proactive support encourages the plant to invest energy in both vertical and lateral growth, so you get that nice bushy appearance through natural processes, not stress responses. To really understand why invisible pruning works better than traditional topping, we need to dive into plant hormone science for a moment. The growth patterns in pepper plants are controlled mainly by a hormone called auxin, which is produced at the growing tips and then travels downward through the plant. This hormone naturally suppresses the development of lateral branches, and that's a phenomenon known as apical dominance. So, when you top a pepper plant, you're actually completely removing the source of auxin production, which, does indeed break apical dominance and lets those lateral branches start to develop. But, here's the thing. This sudden, complete elimination of auxin creates a sort of hormonal chaos that the plant has to work to rebalance. It's kind of like suddenly removing a traffic control system from a busy intersection. Eventually, yeah, traffic might sort itself out, but not without some significant delays and a whole lot of confusion. Invisible pruning techniques, on the other hand, work a lot more subtly with these hormonal systems. By creating optimal growing conditions and making minimal strategic interventions, you can, gradually reduce auxin dominance without causing hormonal shock. This might mean gently bending or training branches to more horizontal positions, which naturally reduces auxin flow. Or maybe just making tiny strategic pinches instead of any major cuts. The result is a plant that develops multiple growing points through natural hormone regulation, not some kind of emergency response. These naturally developed branches usually end up being stronger, more productive, and honestly, better integrated into the plant's overall structure than those emergency branches that show up after a traumatic topping. So, the proof of any gardening technique really lies in the harvest, and honestly, the evidence strongly favors invisible pruning methods over traditional topping. Plants grown using invisible pruning techniques consistently show earlier fruit set, higher overall yields, and better fruit quality compared to their topped counterparts. In side-by-side trials, untopped pepper plants that receive proper support and light management typically begin flowering 1 to 2 weeks earlier than topped plants. This head start translates directly into harvest timing, with invisible pruning methods often producing ripe peppers weeks before topped plants catch up. Over a full growing season, this early advantage compounds significantly. The structural differences between topped and naturally branched plants become even more apparent as the season progresses. Topped plants often develop an unbalanced, awkward growth pattern with just 2 to 3 main branches competing for dominance. In contrast, plants grown with invisible pruning develop multiple, well-distributed branches that create a more stable, productive framework. Fruit quality also shows marked differences between the two approaches. Peppers from topped plants often show signs of the stress the plant experienced, including smaller average fruit size, thicker walls but less flesh development, and occasionally bitter flavors in varieties prone to stress-related compounds. Plants grown with invisible pruning methods produce more consistent, better-flavored fruits with optimal flesh development. The pepper topping myth represents a broader issue in modern gardening, our tendency to believe that more intervention leads to better results. In reality, the best gardening practices often involve creating optimal conditions, and then, just getting out of the plant's way. Pepper plants have been evolving for millions of years to produce fruits and reproduce successfully. Our role as gardeners should be to support these natural processes, not override them with traumatic interventions. Creating peak performance in pepper plants starts with soil health. A well-balanced soil rich in organic matter provides the foundation for strong, naturally branching plants. Consistent moisture levels prevent stress-related growth problems, while proper nutrition supports robust development without forcing unnatural growth patterns. These fundamentals often produce better results than any pruning technique. While invisible pruning emphasizes minimal intervention, there are times when strategic action can support your pepper plant's natural tendencies. The key is knowing when and how to make these interventions without triggering stress responses. Light sucker removal, for instance, can redirect energy to main branches without creating the trauma associated with topping. Understanding the seasonal needs of pepper plants reveals why topping is particularly problematic in many growing situations. Peppers are warm-season crops with relatively long development periods from seed to harvest. Any setback early in the season can significantly impact total productivity, especially in regions with shorter growing seasons. The evidence clearly demonstrates that the traditional pepper topping method, while well-intentioned, often does more harm than good. The stress-induced branching that results from topping creates plants that may look bushier but honestly perform poorly compared to properly supported, naturally branched alternatives. Understanding the science behind plant growth responses allows us to work with these natural processes rather than against them. Invisible pruning represents a fundamental shift in thinking about plant care. Instead of forcing desired outcomes through traumatic interventions, we create conditions that encourage plants to express their natural productivity. This approach requires more understanding of plant biology and environmental factors, but, it consistently produces superior results with less stress on both plants and gardeners. The future of pepper growing lies in this deeper understanding of plant needs and responses. By abandoning outdated techniques like traumatic topping in favor of science-based approaches that support natural growth patterns, we can achieve the productive, healthy pepper plants we all desire while working in harmony with plant biology rather than against it. Ready to revolutionize your pepper growing game? Start implementing these invisible pruning techniques in your garden this season, and honestly, prepare to be amazed by the results. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more myth-busting gardening content and share this guide with fellow gardeners who are ready to leave outdated techniques behind. Together, we can grow better peppers through better science. Your plants will thank you for it.